Well, it looks like Okita finally got her die shorty. Hello everyone, Soberoni of G&A Reviews here,
and Musaki from the Chaldea Gurus.
Here with a servant spotlight for the assassin that is so in demand that DW won't have to make another one for nearly 2 years, Okita J. Soji. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers of how to utilize her effectively and an overall grade, comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 4-star servants. So if you're ready to take to the skies, strap on your jetpack and make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring my bell so that you can catch all of these spotlight videos as they go up, and you can help out the channel.
And if you like guides and servant reviews with a little bit of a twist, that twist being your favorite waifu or respondo leading you, then head on over to Chaldea Gurus on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, like the videos, and hey, we'll be happy to have you.
Now, on to Okita's stats.
Okita's max HP is 10,366, and she has a max attack stat of 9,337, which is closer to 8,403 because of her assassin class modifier. She has the lowest HP of all 4-star assassins, but her attack is good for her class. Unfortunately, as an assassin, both her attack and HP stats are below average compared to most 4-star servants. Where Okita really shines, though, is her deck. She has a whopping 5 hits on her quick card, 3 hits on her arts, 1 hit on her buster, and a 5-hit extra card. Her MP gain rate of 0.92% and star rate of 25.3% give her strong double phantasm generation and star generating as well. Okita's stats overall are on the weak side, but she does have a very good offensive focus for her class.
Taking a look at her skills, her first skill is Jet Tennen Rishin Ryu. It increases her crit damage between 50 and 100% and her star absorb between 400 and 800% for 1 turn, depending on level, but as a demerit it also removes one of her own defensive buffs. Her second skill is Eye of the Mind J, rank A-. It grants her evasion and sure hit for 1 turn, and it also increases her NP damage between 10 to 20% for 3 turns, depending on level. And finally, her last skill is M Drive, rank EX. This skill increases her own quick card effectiveness for 3 turns, between 30 and 50% depending on level, but as a demerit, it will also decrease her defense by 20% every turn for 3 turns, starting at 10% and maxing at 50%. For her passives, she has Presence Concealment J, rank B-, which increases her crit star generating by 7.5%, but reduces her own instant kill resistance by 10%. She also has Magic Resistance J, rank C, which increases her debuff resist by 15%, but reduces her own instant kill resistance by 10%, and Existence Outside of the Domain, rank E, which generates 2 crit stars every turn, and increases her debuff resistance by 2%. As for her deck and Noble Phantasm,
Okita has a quick deck with 3 quick cards, 1 arch card, and 1 buster card. She also has a quick Noble Phantasm, Jet Sadanseki,
also known as Shino no Me ni Kirameku Mumio no Hikari,
which is an AoE attack that deals damage to all enemies, with a 600% to 1000% damage modifier, depending on level. And it also removes all enemy defensive buffs, and lowers the defense between 30 and 50% depending on overcharge. But it does have a 60% chance to leave Okita stunned for the current turn.
Okita requires a fairly diverse range of mats for her ascension. For level ascension, she needs 4 black grease, 8 seashells, 8 talons, and 4 hearts. Black grease is best farmed at the northern cliffs in Agartha with a 20% drop rate. Seashells have a 39% drop rate at the observatory in Babylonia. Talons can be farmed at the Moen in America where they have a 20% drop rate, and hearts have a 12% drop rate at the Carter residence in Salem. For skill leveling, Okita requires 12 seashells, 8 black grease, 40 night metals, and 12 reactor cores per skill. Night metals drop at the Royal Castle in Camelot with a 33% drop rate, while reactor cores have a 22% drop rate at the Shanyang Hills in Lost Belt 3. I can't believe it took this long for Okita to get her swimsuit. Feels a little unjust.
Tell that to Medusa and Medea.
They'll get their chance, but for now, it's Okita's time. Okita's modus operandi is DPS, and despite being an assassin, she has a very offensively focused stat spread, packing very good attack for her class. Her HP stat is disappointingly low, but she makes up for it by having spectacular NP gain and star generating, nearly on par with Jack. And despite the inherent offensive weaknesses of her class, Okita's kit is loaded to maximize her DPS. Her first skill, Jet Tennen Rishin Ryu, gives her a powerful 100% crit damage buff along with a star absorb, on an incredibly short cooldown. Unfortunately, it does come with a demerit of removing one of her defensive buffs, but that is a very small price to pay for such a strong crit steroid. Very few servants have a straight up 100% buff to crit damage, and the ones that do typically don't have such short cooldowns. And since Okita is such an excellent star generator, this means that she can easily set herself up for some incredibly high burst damage every 4 turns. And strong steroids with demerits seems to be a theme for Okita. Her third skill, M Drive, gives a 50% buff to her quick cards for a full 3 turns, but at the cost of lowering her defense. The demerit is significant. It lowers her defense by 20% every turn for 3 turns, up to a maximum of 50%, which means that on turn 3, she'll be as fragile as glass. But in return, Okita Assassin has one of the best quick buffs in the game, with what is essentially a 3-turn mana burst. And that mana burst works especially well for Okita due to her heavy quick deck and the fact that she can spam her Noble Phantasm quite easily. But that isn't the only damage buff that Okita can take advantage of. She also has Eye of the Mind J, an evade that also grants her sure hit and a 20% additional damage buff to her NP for 3 turns. Needless to say, this skill works phenomenally well with her quick buff to really juice up her Noble Phantasm damage. They even share the same high uptime, so Okita's Noble Phantasm damage remains consistent and doesn't fall off after repeated use like with other 1-turn buffs. The sure hit provides some nice utility, as does the evade, both coming in handy for more challenging content, but you'll primarily want to use this skill offensively.
Oni, it sounds like you're saying if you really want to get the most out of Okita's Noble Phantasm, you should level her quick buff first, then Eye of Mind for damage, and save her crit buff for last.
That's right, Moo, and if you want to go crit Okita, then you can level her crit skill second instead of last. As for her Noble Phantasm, it's an AoE attack that reduces enemy defense and removes their defensive buffs. However, it does have a 60% chance of stunning her. It's important to note that while the stun is annoying, it isn't the same as Fran's. It only lasts until the end of the current turn, not into the next turn. So even if Okita is unlucky enough to be stunned by her NP, her cards won't be locked on the next turn. She'll just immediately stop attacking in the current turn. So you can actually play around the stun by using her Noble Phantasm at the end of a Brave Chain rather than at the start. That said though, this is an incredibly strong NP. Not only does it deal more damage than other AoE assassins, it also has good utility for removing enemy buffs and softening them up. Okita's NP gain is top tier as well, so she can easily spam this Noble Phantasm and stack the debuff or clear multiple enemy waves. Okita's strength lies in her overtuned DPS. She can deal a lot of damage given her rarity and her class. Her Noble Phantasm is strong enough to clear most enemy waves and make her a solid farmer, while her high uptime quick and crit buffs ensure that her face cards also hit very hard. She even has some useful utility in her sure hit, spammable defensive buff removal, and defense down, so she can be useful for some boss fights. Any way that you want to build her, Okita is sure to put a hurting on the enemy, but to compensate for her overly strong DPS tools, she is loaded with demerits as well, some worse than others. The stun can be somewhat avoided by using her NP card last in a Brave Chain, while the defensive buff removal can be circumvented by activating her first skill before her evade. But what can't be avoided is the self-defense down on her third skill. This defensive debuff cannot be cleansed with debuff removal, and it makes Okita, who already suffers from low HP, into an absolute glass cannon. She can blow up as fast as berserkers in some cases. She also has a generally awkward playstyle. Since she has to play around so many demerits on her skills and her Noble Phantasm, it can be awkward to use her. And while she may be able to spam her NP well and clear waves, her lack of an NP charge really hurts her. Most of Okita's NP gain comes from face cards, so she can't Scotty loop or farm as effectively as other farming servants. At least not without heavy investment like a Max Limit Broken Kaleidoscope.
Okita seems like a tricky servant to use. You got any recommendations for who she should party up with?
It depends on exactly how you want to use her. She is a flexible servant. With a deck like hers, she does work best in quick teams, but she can be used either as a pure crit DPS or as an NP spammer. For crit DPS builds, I recommend pairing her with servants who can provide her crit stars and additional crit buffs like Caesar, Osakabe Hime, or Brynhilda. Caesar can provide excellent star generating and a powerful high uptime crit buff. Just be wary of the defense down demerit that he gives, which can exacerbate Okita's fragility. Osakabe Hime and Bryn are likewise good choices for their good crit buffs. Osakabe has the advantage of being able to heal Okita for longer fights, while Bryn's crit buff greatly improves Okita's consistency. For a more Noble Phantasm focused role, I recommend using servants that can give Okita external sources of NP gain or NP charge, like Nero Bride, Helena, or Santa Altera. Bride and Helena do an excellent job of giving Okita NP charge and buffing her damage, while Altera can provide NP charge and provide additional crit support with some good star generating. Okita Assassin's Bond CE is beyond the azure sky. It buffs the party's quick card effectiveness and crit damage by 15%, but lowers the defense by 10%. Not the best CE since Okita isn't a support, and there are far better damage options. For crit Okita, I would recommend CEs that buff crit damage and quick damage, like 3 Anglers, Gem Magecraft, or Midsummer Moment. For a more general damage approach, use CEs that maximize Okita's NP damage, like Imaginary Around, Someday in Summer, or even Black Grail, for shorter fights where HP isn't as much of an issue.
Personally, I think Traces of Christmas is also a great CE to be on the lookout for. It comes out this Christmas and it raises Okita's Noble Phantasm gain and quick damage, which is essential for her kit.
Yep, and I also recommend using command codes that improve crit damage like Phantasmal Horse. Overall, Summer Okita is a DPS heavy assassin that can sometimes feel more like a berserker than an assassin, for better and for worse. Her Noble Phantasm damage and utility are phenomenal for her class, which makes her excellent for wave clearing and boss fights alike. She has an incredibly strong crit steroid that gives her very high burst damage, and her strong NP gain, star generating, and high uptime buffs ensure that her damage never really falls off, and it makes her very self-sufficient. But her obvious issues lie in her plethora of demerits. Not only do they make her awkward to use, they also make her incredibly fragile and ill-suited for fights that last more than 3 or 4 turns. And while her NP gain is fantastic, it mostly comes from her face cards, which means that she isn't best suited for farming or looping without a lot of help. So all in all, Okita Summer gets an A- from me.
And she gets an A from me.
I think that we can both agree that Okita is a strong servant whose damage and consistency may surprise you. She makes for a very good DPS to build a quick team around, however, she is still somewhat held back by her fragility and demerits. And those are our thoughts on Summer Okita. Big thanks to Chaldea Gurus for helping out with the video, so make sure you check them out, they'll be linked in the description down below, and let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. Sabroni out. Later.